You are tuned in to the Foul Weather Podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
Chesapeake Bay is the birthplace of American waterfowling. The bounty, the abundant fish, shellfish, and waterfowl made being a waterman and living off the bay a reality. But the bounty of the bay and its watershed also made it a perfect place for people to live and thrive. As populations and development grew in the Chesapeake watershed, so did the pollution and other environmental problems. Waterfowl are still abundant in the bay, but are the heydays of the bay gone forever? Can we bring it back to its glory days? Today we meet with two great conservationists from the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership that know a lot about the Chesapeake. Grayson Haynes, Government Affairs Advisor, and Jim Kauffman, Pennsylvania Field Representative and Wildlife Health Coordinator. Gentlemen, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and welcome into the Foul Weather Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Mike. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate y'all. This has been a little bit in the making and going back and forth and trying to find schedules where you guys are available, but I'd like to kind of first hear maybe some history of waterfowling on Chesapeake Bay. A lot of our listeners are from across the country, and as you know, most of the waterfowl hunters are kind of in the Mississippi flyway and then maybe the Pacific Central and less so in the Atlantic. So there might be a lot of folks that don't know as much about the Chesapeake Bay. And then, maybe some personal stories about your waterfowl hunting experiences in the bay itself and kind of upstream into Pennsylvania specifically for Jim. So I'm not sure who takes this first. Jim, did you want to take some crack at the history of waterfowling?
Sure. And, full disclosure, I'm not a waterman. I'm not a bay guy. I grew up in the fields and forests and mountains of Pennsylvania, so I don't know if I'm the most qualified to talk about this, but, have spent some time down there, especially on the Eastern Shore, on the bay. I'm just, immersed in the local culture and doing one of the things that I love to do, and that's pick and eating crabs. But, the bay itself, again, this, like you mentioned, it's an area where the culture is just so unique. And for somebody like me from Pennsylvania, it is a completely different world down there, and it's not that far from home. You have this culture and tradition of watermen, crabbers, the oystermen, in this big, beautiful, productive ecosystem. This is the largest estuary in the United States, and like you mentioned, it's unfortunately been degraded. The fishing opportunities are incredible. The waterfowl hunting opportunities are incredible. If you go back, into the early 19th century, that's when the gunning clubs were at their height. A lot of rural hunters, people feeding their families. We went through that period of overexploitation. We didn't have regulations at that time. There was market hunting, commercialized hunting. Canvasbacks were harvested, for table fare, very good eating. And as the guns, boats, and decoys got more sophisticated, people were killing a heck of a lot of ducks. So, some people refer to it kind of as the heyday, and I think maybe that's a misnomer. It was basically the slaughter of ducks because, just the sheer number of ducks that were there without harvest regulations were, people were shooting thousands and thousands of ducks. And, I have an interesting story. I spent some time at the Karen Noonan Center, which is owned by the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. It's an educational facility south of Cambridge. And at one time, this facility was like a prestigious hunting lodge, and they hosted people like Babe Ruth, Annie Oakley, that went down there to shoot ducks. And I read the ledger book when I was down there, and it lists the number of ducks that were shot during a lot of those hunting trips, and just the sheer numbers was unbelievable. Just thousands and thousands and thousands of ducks, and it's a wonder that any of them made it through. So again, luckily this led to the development of wildlife laws, regulations, reform, and the populations are certainly recovered to, sustainable hunting levels now.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And one of the things I teach my students in my full-time job the podcast, for those of you who are newer listeners, this is not my full-time job. I'm a professor at a school in central New York that focuses on forestry and wildlife. And, I teach them that you shouldn't blame the market gunners for everything. It was largely driven by markets in cities that were nearby. And so they were just taking advantage of the market that was created for them in a capitalistic system. But we did wise up, realize that wasn't sustainable, and had to kind of formulate some regulations around that so that we could all enjoy those waterfowl resources kind of into the future. So, Grayson, you do a lot of government affairs stuff. So you spend a little bit of time in Washington, D.C., I'm guessing. Not too far from Chesapeake Bay, and definitely part of that bigger watershed. Experiences in that part of the world for yourself for hunting?
Yeah, plenty. It's a lot of river hunting around us, mainly since that our wetlands are probably more so private. Like we don't have as many public wetlands in our area. We really depend a lot on those rivers. So yeah, no, Virginia. Grew up there mostly, grew up partially in Virginia Beach as well. That's home of the Atlantic Wildfowl Museum. You can see a ton of Chesapeake's rich history there. Some beautiful decoy carvings, some of like the original calls. You can see the punt gun, which was at like what these market hunters used to use and just blast into massive flocks of ducks and geese. But yeah, no, extremely rich history here in the Chesapeake, and really happy to be able to participate in it and contribute to the continuing conservation story of this area. Yeah, but mostly cut my teeth waterfowl hunting in this region. Kind of started around 2020. I went a couple times as a kid, but really got out kind of the same time a lot of people did, where, during COVID, everyone turned to the outdoors for, great reprieve. And I kind of just learned DIY waterfowl hunting with a group of friends around here. And then plenty of great mentors also in the conservation field at large, and including your podcast as well. So it all put all of that together, and
I appreciate that.
A ton of really great resources to learn from.
Yeah, and a little bit, I just mentioned, that you're, in the government affairs area. So, I'm going to have you, Grayson, give a little rundown. Is what does that mean when it says government affairs advisor for TRCP, which is what we're going to call y'all now? And I think people are pretty familiar with TRCP acronym. So what's your daily, weekly look like for you?
Yeah, so our job essentially on the government affairs team, we have 3 government affairs staff at TRCP, myself included. Our job is to go advocate for all of the great conservation programs that are a part kind of already of like the North American wildlife model. So our main buckets at TRCP, we have freshwater conservation, we have private lands conservation, which is where all of our farm bill advocacy work comes into play. We have marine fisheries, so kind of our marine fisheries, oceans, a bucket of conservation as well. And then, of course, public lands, which is very much in the spotlight these days between what's happening in Congress and what's happening in the administration right now. So those are our main priority areas that we actually advocate, for quality places to hunt and fish for all Americans. So if that's going in and, going to members of Congress and talking about what sort of bills will help, Americans access these great outdoor places, increased funding for these places, and also for farm bill conservation programs, enrolling private landowners, helping them improve habitat so that we can fill our skies with all the great waterfowl species that we hunt every year. It's a positive feedback loop kind of work that we do. And it feels very aligned and justified with all of the things that brings us to the table. Like we have a passion for hunting, we have a passion for fishing, and we get to defend those every day at work. So it really makes the mission that much sweeter.
Yeah, it's got to be pretty satisfying, but also sometimes the roadblocks must feel a little frustrating as well. Like there's a lot of I'm guessing your days are like, that's a huge win. Oh, that's a huge loss. That's a huge win. That's a huge loss. And I run into that. I get one email and I'm like, man, that just crushed my soul. And then the next one lifts you back up.
Sure. But like we're all saying, that time in the blind or that time in the turkey woods or fishing. We just had a staff retreat in West Virginia, and we had an awesome time fishing the way upper Potomac River, and we got to look around and, all kind of look at each other and say, this is why we do what we do, is to
Yeah.
protect these places, to
Yep.
protect these resources. So it's fantastic when you have those moments outside that remind you why you show up to work every day.
I love it. And I tell my students all the time, you should skip class and go experience the things to know why you're going to class, right? Like you
Love it.
need to get out and see it. So, Jim, you are the Pennsylvania field representative and wildlife health coordinator. Give me a quick rundown of what that means on a daily, kind of weekly basis.
Yeah, and I think Grayson did a great job kind of explaining, our passion and why we do what we do. And, along the same lines of that is why I'm here in Pennsylvania. We have people kind of stationed around the country. Some are state level and others are geography. And, I'm essentially our Pennsylvania person. So like Grayson said, it's working with decision makers here in Pennsylvania. We have a long history and tradition and culture, a very strong hunting culture here, between our deer hunting traditions, the history of public land and of deer camps. And that's something that we want to preserve for future generations. So my job here in Pennsylvania is to have a presence through the organization and, help to steer good wildlife and hunting and fishing conservation policy in the right direction. So, that involves getting to know people, networking, and having a presence around the table when you're making those decisions that, again, promote those traditions and values that we all love and care about. I grew up recreating and hunting on public lands here in Pennsylvania. And, for those of us that don't have family background with private lands or places to recreate on, those spaces are crucial and vital for our heritage and culture to continue. And that's something that, growing up, I never thought we would potentially lose public lands. And, that has been something that our organization has been very adamant about is protecting those public lands. And we're seeing some efforts to dismantle them in some areas. So, that's something that I'm certainly passionate about and would advocate for, maintaining in perpetuity.
Yeah, those are great introductions and to yourselves and TRCP and your passion and your advocacy that means so much to so many. So I'm really looking forward to diving more into this as we move through this interview. But let's take a quick break. We'll be right back to talk about changes to the bay through the ages. So please stick with us. My friends across duck country, time to step up your calling with Beckman Game Calls. These beauties sound like a duck. Just have a listen. First, a real hen mallard, and then the Edison in the flooded timber of Arkansas. Beckman Game Calls with a lot of new colors and woods coming soon. Both the Edison and the Groundbreaker calls are adjustable to your air pressure, and the Groundbreaker is the first adjustable cut down on the market. Check out Beckman Game Calls today at beckmangamecalls.com. All right, and we're back. So if folks follow environmental issues in the East, they know that water quality in the Chesapeake is near the top of that list. We also know that water quality is key in sustaining waterfowl and waterfowl hunting in the bay. But let's go ahead and jump in, letting our listeners know kind of the traditional challenges with water quality in the bay and maybe follow up with some of the recent challenges, but also I'd say some successes. So yeah, what's been going on in the bay, guys, in the past that are kind of those traditional challenges to water quality? I think there's a lot of suspended solids, loss of submerged aquatic vegetation that these birds depend on. And then what have we been doing to kind of, face those challenges head on and get some successes? So lots to talk about, I think, here. Whoever wants to take that one first.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about, some of the upstream impacts throughout the watershed, and then maybe I'll turn it over to Grayson. He can talk about how that's impacting waterfowl in the bay itself. But, I have some experience and background in working with farmers and landowners upstream within Pennsylvania's portion of the watershed. And it's important to remember that the Chesapeake Bay watershed is this gigantic area that contains 18 million people. So there's all kinds of upstream impacts, whether it's farming, through our intensive agriculture, livestock impacts. We have development, increased impermeable surface. We're having wastewater issues, which I think Grayson will touch on a little bit later, in our changing rainfall patterns. So we're seeing things like erosion continuing, sedimentation that's getting into the bay, nutrients through manure, these stormwater lawns, herbicides that are adding more pollutants, and these are all being transported to the bay. So again,
I got to stop you because that is a giant list of I was going to say things that are aggressive towards the bay, but I was trying to find my words. Like, that's a egregious list of negative impacts, it seems, in general. So that's a lot to be up against, I think.
Right. And, one of the ways that TRCP helps to improve the bay is by advocating for programs and policies that do this upstream work throughout the watershed. We use the phrase conservation practices, and these are things like riparian buffers, livestock fencing, manure management structures, cover crops, these things that are important upstream that ultimately protect the health of the bay. And in order to be able to install those conservation practices, we need staff and we need adequate funding for those programs and for those projects.
Yeah, definitely. Jim, and building on that as well, kind of going back to what a week looks like. I've been reflecting on that question a little bit since you asked it. This week, actually, NRCS is hosting conservation practice standard organization meetings. So it's a stakeholder meeting. Ourselves.
So real quick,
Go ahead.
for listeners, so that's United States Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is NRCS.
Yes.
So I'm just making sure. I mean, all three of us can talk in this lingo, no problem. I just want to make sure listeners got it all. So
For sure.
it's the folks that deliver the Farm Bill programs in general.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot that they do, but go ahead. I just want to make sure the listeners understood the NRCS lingo. Most of them do, but I just wanted to ensure it.
No, that's all good. In DC, we definitely get stuck in acronym talk, and it can become quite an alphabet soup.
Yep.
So part of what we do
Go.
at TRCP is we make sure that those conservation practice standards that do help wildlife, that do help private landowners, it helps them with their productivity, it helps them with increased waterfowl numbers, helps them with better habitat, all in conjunction with their actual operation. We want to make sure that when we're going in there, we are A, putting the farmer first, and B, making sure that those programs are easy to enroll in. So that when it does come time, to check water quality in the bay, it's not so much of an issue as to, we need more of these producers enrolled, but just making these programs easier for them to actually participate in. So with all that being said, the challenges definitely do continue being in a large urban area. We have a massive population and it's growing. Earlier this year, there was a sewage pipeline burst on the Upper Potomac River, just a few miles above Georgetown, actually, pretty popular area for paddle sports. That's where the shad run occurs. Tons of anglers go out, chase striped bass, American shad, hickory shad, all up that part of the river. And just a few miles above that, we had millions of gallons of raw sewage burst at the end of like a literal pipe on the C&O Canal burst into the river right at the end of waterfowl season last year. I remember I was scouting, driving over the bridge just above the lock on the canal, looking down and seeing a foam on the top of the water that wasn't the usual foam that happens after water gets mixed up in the rocks. Looking down and kind of seeing a slick on top of the water and thinking, yeah, that's kind of weird. A couple days later, it came out that sewage pipeline had burst, and that's when we were having a ton of freezing temperatures as well. So open water was limited, and wintering birds were looking for open water. I did see flocks of birds flying over that open water, so it was a bit concerning that was the only available habitat for that time of year was warm water gushing out of this sewage pipe. So it was definitely, it's been, the restrictions on recreational water usage has been lifted. DC Water has done a great job actually cleaning up that spill. But instances like that just remind us that we have to do the due diligence upstream so that when these downstream events happen, there's plenty of mitigation already being done. So
Mhm.
it's reducing those compounding effects on the river and for our resources, and especially for wintering habitat, which is so precious.
Yeah, the number of that Jim kind of put in there of different types of negative inputs to the bay makes it frustrating. That's an urban one with a sewage pipeline burst, and so it's not like a one solution fits all. It's like a multi-pronged approach. It's got like lots of tentacles that are have to constantly be working throughout the landscape, right? It's not just farms running manure into or in nutrients into the bay. It's also a lot of urban inputs and just people's personal lawns and stuff that they're putting on there that are getting into the bay. So it's just such a big watershed with a lot of inputs, which makes it really difficult to deal with. And then I think, a sewage pipeline burst is like an aging infrastructure thing that's probably happening in a lot of urban areas because it's one of the first places we colonized, right? And so it's not like everything's brand new. Like, I don't know, my little brother lives in Salt Lake City. It looks like everything's pretty up to code and brand new out there. But the East Coast has a lot of these issues and big populations around pretty important water bodies. So it's a struggle. But on the farm bill end of things, what's kind of the uptake of kind of farm bill conservation programs? Do you want to speak to that at all at this point, or move on to other topics?
Well, I wanted to add something real quick before I'll let Grayson talk about the farm bill a little bit, but just wanted to give an example of one of the ways that we're working on advocating for funding for upstream efforts for the Bay here in Pennsylvania. And, one of the things that we do as an organization is we're trying to bridge the gap to get hunters and anglers to really care about policy and funding programs and, to think about when you're on the Eastern Shore and you shoot a canvasback, that it's because of these upstream programs and the conservation practices that are being implemented. So, trying to get hunters and anglers to support and care about policy for clean water, things that are happening upstream in Pennsylvania could lead to more cans in your bag on the Eastern Shore. But just an example of something we're doing, Pennsylvania is working on its upcoming budget right now. And we have this thing within the budget called the Clean Streams Fund. And that provides funding for things like the Agricultural Conservation Assistance Program, which dedicates money to county conservation districts. So we just had an action alert go out this week to all of our Pennsylvania members and supporters to get them to advocate for good, solid, robust funding of that Clean Streams Fund in our upcoming Pennsylvania budget, because that's leading directly to these county conservation districts having the funding to be able to implement conservation practices upstream. So again, that we're just trying to connect the dots between these upstream practices, programs, and funding to better water quality, better angling opportunities, and ultimately better waterfowl hunting opportunities on the bay.
Yeah, and that's a great comment because I think that it's such a big watershed. It's hard to see the big picture when you're a long ways away from the potential impacts.
Right. I mean, the watershed, it extends all the way to Cooperstown, New York. So, this gigantic area from New York south to the Bay, there's a ton of ag land and a ton of developed infrastructure and urbanized areas. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I have never actually hunted in what I'd say Chesapeake Bay proper, Eastern Shore, anything like that, but I fished in the watershed within New York, right, on the Susquehanna. So long ways from here to there. Let's just call it that. So
Well, now that you've dangled that out there, you are invited, of course, this waterfowl season to come hunting in this region. I don't know if that's what you were fishing for, but you got it.
Oh, always, always. But here's my deal. I tell people, because I do get a fair bit of invites, and I deeply appreciate all of them. I can do about one per year because I have a job. So it's like my Christmas break where we're not teaching or actively doing research for the most part. We take a little bit of a break. I've got maybe 2, 3 weeks of the year that I would actually call like quote unquote vacation. Believe me, it's not even that. But yeah, yeah, I would definitely take
I'll
y'all
take
up
you
on
up on
that.
that offer, Grayson. Don't worry, I'm in.
Thanks. That was that was a great way of letting me down easy there. Thank you.
Hey, I've heard some mention, I've seen some news stories about Menhaden fisheries and what's going on with that and water quality. Like what's the headline there?
I would say menhaden I mean, it's a keystone species in the bay.
What the heck is it? I don't even know what it is.
Menhaden is a species of forage fish.
Okay.
Essentially, think of like a small silvery fish with a little dot on it. Those are menhaden. Their populations support sport fish, striped bass, tuna, uh, bird species, ospreys, mergansers eat the roe of menhaden. Plenty of diving, all the pescatory feeding diving ducks.
You can say fish eating, it's good.
Fish eating, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're
Fish
good. You're
eating,
good.
diving ducks definitely depend on menhaden as well. They're a very base trophic level species, so they
Hmm.
support a wide variety of animals and wildlife here in the Chesapeake. And we're doing work to protect menhaden and share the allotment of the commercial fishing quota, at least on the East Coast. Right now, Virginia owns a very large percentage of that quota, and we're trying to spread that out. Currently have an action alert about that right now, just trying to protect the species that so many hunters and anglers rely on to be healthy every year to support an abundant Chesapeake Bay.
So you said commercial fishery. There's a Menhaden commercial fishery? Is that what
Yes,
is
it
it
is
like
it.
used for cat food or dog food or what is
It's
it used
used.
for?
So there are products like a lot of fish oil products, yes,
Okay.
cat food as well. Fish oil products that, you see in the grocery stores support healthy omega 3s,
Hmm.
kind of those because menhaden's a very oily fish. It has a lot of good supplemental
Which is
properties
why
to it.
everything wants to eat it, probably.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That's why it's such a great forage keystone species.
So you're trying to work on like the even distribution of that take in general, so the
Essentially, yes.
wildlife also has a share of it.
Yes. So the Atlantic Marine Fisheries Council allots every state its own quota, and we're trying to be sure that Virginia doesn't take the majority of that quota so that it's spread more evenly and that fishery isn't so one-sided near the kind of the mouth of the bay where Virginia is situated.
Hmm. Cool stuff. I mean, very specific example, but I'd seen it in the news and just thought I figured you guys had your finger on the pulse of that. So you've probably got a lot of partners in the watershed. I mean, you're called the TRCP, and the last portion is partnership, and that's kind of what you do is partner with a lot of. I mean, think you're the largest partner of all other conservation groups in the country, but who are your general partners in the watershed that you typically, the Chesapeake Bay watershed that y'all typically work with?
Yeah, we have a policy council and we have a corporate council. Our corporate council consists of companies that are aligned with our mission. Our policy council does more of the advocacy work that we do as well. So, of course, the classic Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever are all, those are just some of the organizations that, we work with on Capitol Hill on a weekly basis. The Nature Conservancy is also one of them that works specifically on, the watershed, and those important resources surrounding it.
If somebody wanted to help out with the water quality stuff in Chesapeake Bay, like what is it that folks can do that live in the Chesapeake Bay to kind of help with this water quality problem?
So I'm glad you asked that question. Actually, this week in the House of Representatives, the House Natural Resource Committee is marking up the America the Beautiful Act. So in 2020, the Land and Water Conservation Fund was authorized in perpetuity. The Land and Water Conservation Fund is responsible for actually purchasing land that can be used as public land sources. So a lot of the access points that have, turned into boat ramps or public parks that we use to access the river, whether it be in Potomac, upper Maryland rivers, that that program was integral to making sure that those access points were available to the public. This coming week, the Legacy Restoration Fund, which is a kind of a brother led piece of legislation as part of the America the Beautiful Act, is being marked up. It's important that it passes because the Legacy Restoration Fund addresses the maintenance backlog of America's public lands. So 5% of that allotted money goes towards the Fish and Wildlife Service as a part of rebuilding refuges, making sure that those access points are maintained, are safe in the middle of hunting season. It's a very important piece of legislation and it's moving quickly right now. The Senate just passed their version last week. This coming week is going to be hopefully passed in the House. They're looking at ideally, timeline's getting tight, but they're looking at a July 4th passage for that to be signed into law, which would be a huge win for America's hunters and anglers.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of discussion with that, and I chatted with a colleague of yours, John Devney from Delta Waterfowl, a
John,
while back now,
good man.
about they've really been beating the drum of the refuge system and that deferred maintenance and backlog of work. And his comment is like it needed to go to berms and water control structures, and it went to like gravel for roads at best, previously. So this time around, it looks like it's really going to help a lot with the access. So it's good that that's got some real forward momentum in general, and kind of really do kind of look forward to that into the future. And I'm really looking forward to seeing as I travel around the country and talk to podcast listeners what it's doing on refuges. And I hope it's something that's noticeable to everybody for access and quality to hunting locations, because I tell you, unless you got that infrastructure and you can control your water and you can get to places to hunt, it doesn't really matter if it's public land, if it's just not quality places to hunt and fish and the access isn't there. So kudos to you guys for being on the front end of that as well.
I'm glad you brought up John Devney. I would be remiss to not include Delta Waterfowl's work in the Chesapeake Bay region as well to improve water quality and waterfowl numbers, especially. Hunted with John and actually Dr. Aaron Field, who was on the podcast as well,
Yep.
just last year in North Dakota. We had a pretty phenomenal day, and learning from John Devney, just the decades of waterfowl experience that he brings. I learned a tremendous amount even in just one morning of shooting gadwalls over a cloudy pothole than I did in years of failing on the Atlantic Flyway. But
well, you were also in the epicenter of duck country too,
for
Grayson,
sure,
so
for sure.
You can't beat that. Anything else on, progress of farm bill stuff?
For sure.
It sounds like there's just a ton going on right now.
Yes,
So,
definitely. This is a very busy week for Farm Bill. There's two hearings in the House side, actually. So there will be a hearing. If you can tune into it, you can watch these streams on YouTube if you want to get involved, and be wary of what your congressman is talking about. So this week, the Forest Service actually has a hearing, and on Wednesday, the House Agriculture Committee is going to be talking about the implementation of these conservation programs since this administration has begun. So those are two important ones to listen into if you want to stay up to speed.
so how would you do that? I've flipped through and seen C-SPAN and stuff where there's just like ongoing votes and things on the floor. Is like sounds like more focused, like committee discussions you're talking about.
Yeah, they can be pretty fascinating to watch at times, and other times they can have quite a slow pace, make for some nice background noise. I would say on
Good.
you can watch on YouTube House Agriculture Committee. Just type that into the search bar.
Okay.
Tune in on Wednesday and Thursday will be those two hearings. Today, the Senate Agriculture Committee is going to be releasing their draft bill. So they essentially call it a discussion text, which means it is their response to the House Farm Bill that was passed in March. So after the House passed their version of the Farm Bill, we worked tirelessly to make sure that they had good, conservation investments, and conservation program updates as well. So the Senate's going to release their version today. Then it goes to a discussion. So all of our partner organizations will read through that text, present our ideas, improvements, say, this is great. This has got a strong conservation investment. Um, let's go ahead and move forward with this. Then it goes back to the Senate. The Senate will mark up the Farm Bill, goes back to conference with the House, and then after that, ideally, it's passed into law. Um, After the One Big Beautiful Bill earlier this year kind of created the financial investments for the Farm Bill, what you're going to be seeing is more of a policy approach since in the One Big Beautiful Bill, that was a reconciliation bill, you can only update funding, you can't update actual policy. So this is what they call Farm Bill 2.0, is an attempt to address the policy updates that have been needed since Farm Bill needs to be reauthorized every 5 years.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
That's a lot of detail, man. That's a
It's a
lot to
lot of
be.
detail. It is.
So, yeah, it matters being at the table to kind of bring your organizations and your partners kind of priorities forward for, again, the hunting and angling community. I want to ask Jim, kind of on the ground, kind of personal experience, maybe working with programs with farmers, helping guide some of the stuff. Grayson talks about all the halls of Washington D.C. What does it look like on the ground? Sorry, you shook your head at me, Grayson. Did I say something wrong?
Not at all. Not at all. You're right. I wish I was more on the ground, though. This is
That's fair.
The grass is greener on the other side. You aren't walking through as much manure when you're on a Lancaster County farm as you are in the halls of Washington. Maybe you are, but metaphorically.
There's worse places to be in the world than Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
That's the truth. That's true.
So it's a beautiful piece of the country. So
just,
Jim, just speak a little bit more to that on the ground stuff. Grayson's doing the good work on the policy and the politics. That kind of trickles down or up to you. I'm not sure which way that really goes. What are your steps like other than in a pile of manure here and there?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Trickling downstream from Lancaster County. We can't stress the enough the importance of these Farm Bill programs. Especially within the Title II conservation programs. Farmers and landowners, habitat managers, agencies rely on the programs. I'm going to spell them out instead of just using the acronyms, but the Conservation Reserve Program, Conservation Reserve and Enhancement Program, we call them CRP or CREP, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, which is EQIP, and the Conservation Stewardship Program, which is CSP. And these are programs that provide resources for farmers that they need to implement these conservation practices upstream. And we, as an organization, have, like Grayson mentioned, have been advocating for a new farm bill. Aaron Field and Grayson and others have been working with G.T. Thompson's staff, who's the chairman of the House Ag Committee, to try to get good, robust funding within Title II. And my positions previously or prior to this job had been working directly with farmers to implement these conservation practices. And I'll tell you that, most farmers, and I'm generalizing, not all, most farmers want to be good stewards of their property. They want to leave a legacy for their children, for their descendants, but they lack the resources or they lack the understanding of what is needed. When these farms were broken hundreds of years ago, they put livestock in along the creek because the upland areas were farmed. And the livestock needed to drink. So a lot of our pastures in Lancaster County have the dairy cows in the creek. And a lot of these folks want to fence them out and do the right thing, but they don't necessarily understand that having a riparian forest buffer and trees and grass and vegetation along a creek and not having livestock leads to better water quality. So, the first step is to educate them on that and then work towards actually implementing those practices. And, a lot of farmers want to put a fence up along their creek to keep the livestock out, but they don't have an extra $10,000 to $20,000 lying around. And I worked specifically on a lot of fence projects One thing that I was passionate about was getting livestock out of creeks, and it was really incredible to see the difference. When you come to a farm, the dairy cows are in the creek. It's brown, it's muddy, there's no life, and you get the fence installed and come back a year, 2 years later, and it's the water is clear. There's aquatic organisms there. It's green. There's bird life, and it's really neat to see those tangible results.
Yeah, that
on the
restoration
landscape.
stuff is amazing, and how fast the earth can repair itself. The land
Right.
can repair itself. And, if you're a second, third generation kid on a farm and the cows have always been in the creek and you weren't the one that took down the trees and needed the water for the animals, you don't know any different, right? Like the
Right.
Walmart parking lot was always paved type thing, right?
And we hear that a lot where they say, my ancestors worked hard to get these trees out of here, and now you want us to plant more trees.
Right, right.
And again, just that cost barrier where, I worked on a lot of those fence projects, and they are super expensive. I mean, we could not do any fence project for less than $10,000 to $15,000, and that's just for the fencing. That's not including manure storage structures that might be $80,000 to $200,000. Just incredible. But
Yeah.
seeing those results and hearing from farmers, we worked with an Amish farmer a number of years ago who, has a farm with very little cover, very little forest, and they would go to their north central deer camp to hunt deer every year. And he really wanted to install a riparian forest buffer. And he said, I'd love to be able for my kids to be able to hunt deer here and not have to drive 3 hours north to camp. And we planted a buffer. The trees came in, and like 3 years later, he told us that they shot the first buck on that farm in his lifetime. So they saw the tangible results there in that local stream where we did the work. And again, I think that's important to remember that what's happening upstream there is really impacting the aquatic ecosystem of the bay, even though you're not seeing the direct result.
Yeah, and I think that's a great comment, and it's these downstream things are, man, I think there's a lot of folks that would say this isn't the place for government to be paying for riparian buffers and things like that. But water quality to me is a matter of national security. If you take the livelihood of all the people downstream, you are taking tax dollars and throwing, good money at good conservation that's good for the country. And I would say water quality is a national security issue in general. And so I see this very specifically as a place for government for the greater good of the people, and in this case I'd say national security. Without water, we're all screwed. Without water quality, we're all screwed. So I think it's a great place for it. I think I'll chuck that to Grayson because that's kind of a big chunk to bite on, to say water quality is a national security issue. But maybe it's too deep politically for y'all, but that's my take on it. So I'm not trying to talk for TRCP.
No, I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think that's spot on. But one of the other programs I wanted to speak to as well, really relevant to the work that TRCP does, the Voluntary Public Access Habitat Improvement Program, USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Natural Resource Conservation Service, actually just administered a notice of funding opportunity, $52 million for this program. This program, essentially what it does is it pays private landowners for access to their land to hunt. Kansas has a great example of this. In Virginia, I'll speak specifically to the Chesapeake Bay. In Virginia, it was not used specifically for duck hunting, but it has enabled Virginia to now host an annual elk hunt. In the southwest corner of the state, essentially what happened was a lot of private lands were purchased. An elk herd was cultivated by the state, and now there's an annual lottery. 5 hunters get selected. I've never been selected, unfortunately. Neither do I know anyone who has. But every year, 5 tags get filled, 5 elk get shot in Southwest Virginia, and we could see a massive megafauna species be returned to the East Coast, which I think is incredible, and it's only made possible through advocacy for federal programs like this, administered by the Farm Bill. So just wanted to highlight that program as well. That notice of funding is out right now, and most states buy into this program to use for the betterment of hunters and anglers. in those
Yeah,
states.
and that's, incentive for private landowners to enable people to come onto their land. And in the East, like, yeah, we've got public lands, but we don't have it like out West. Like, this is a thing where farm bill programs and other private, entity programs really play a huge role in the East because, public lands, yes, a lot of us grew up on hunting and fishing public lands, but for wildlife, boy, the bread and butter is it happens on that public land. So you got to keep kind of feet in both bins there to keep conservation really running in the East.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, you know, hunters and anglers take on a massive burden of an investment in public land, and that's where the majority of our beginning experiences are. And where we learn how to hunt and fish is on those lands. So it's the burden is on us to take care of it for sure.
Hey guys, I'm going to come back and talk to you about some waterfowl hunting in the Atlantic Flyway. So we're going to get back to ducks and geese and swans and all that jazz. But first, a quick word about the exciting Foul Weather by Hancock Seed collaboration. So yeah, we'll be right back. Stick with us, folks.
It is months until planting season, but your vision is already clear. The land is your passion, and Hancock Seed has your back. You plan food plots to feed and attract game in ways that matter for months. Live on your land with Hancock Seed. Today you plan, tomorrow you harvest. With Hancock Seed, you get family farm faith, nearly a century in the making. Hancock Seed has partnered with Foul Weather to produce 3 distinct seed blends. The Northern Deer Food Plot Mix, a proven combination that keeps deer coming all year round. The Southern Waterfowl Mix for carbohydrate-driven ducks, and the Northern Waterfowl Mix, built to succeed even in the toughest summers. Hancock Seed specializes from turf to plow and beyond. Find them today at hancockseed.com. That's hancockseed.com.
All right, real quick, folks, it sounds like Hancock Seed is actually currently sold out of some of our Foul Weather food plot mixes, so they're restocking seed, so keep an eye out for more from that Foul Weather by Hancock Seed collaboration. If you do click on it and it says sold out, they are sourcing seed as I speak, so check back in with them. But let's get back to waterfowl hunting in the Atlantic Flyway a bit, because I'd say despite harvesting way less ducks than the other flyways, it's not like we don't have strong traditions, and it's not a big part of, our annual lives, and we work real hard to manage waterfowl in this part of the world. So maybe I'll start with Jim. Some thoughts on what sets the Atlantic Flyway apart from other flyways, and how you've been involved in kind of, I guess, the annual surveys or data that we keep through Fish and Wildlife Service and banding and stuff like that kind of keep duck country great. Fire away, Jim.
Yeah, and I can't speak to this significantly because, like I said earlier, full disclosure, I'm not a waterfowl guy. I spend most of my fall chasing deer. I'll just say what I think is special about the East Coast are our wood ducks. And I know there's people probably in the South that would disagree with that, but that's, for me, that has been my waterfowl pursuit, has been chasing wood ducks along our little creeks in Pennsylvania within the Pocono swamps, and just having that, an animal that doesn't look like it belongs, just with the beautiful colors, its ecology of cavity nesting, and just having the opportunity to pursue them again on public lands in the Poconos has been that's been my waterfowl pursuit. Again, I'm not involved in the discussions or numbers or policy, so maybe Grayson's better to talk about that than me.
But you showed us an amazing amount of wood ducks you have at home there before we jumped on, and I might have you take a good picture of that. We might use that as the thumbnail for the episode, actually. So
I'm waiting on my bull canvasback to come back from the taxidermist. I shot a bull can last year, and it was my first one, and had been trying to get one on the Eastern Shore for a couple years, and luckily my buddies let me shoot at a individual solo male that came in, so I know that I actually made the shot. So looking forward to getting him back.
Did you scare him into position, or did you drop him on the first shot?
No, I dropped him on the first shot.
Nice.
Which doesn't happen very often, so I'm gonna have to take credit for that one.
Yeah, I'm one that's always a fan of having 3 shells in the gun, and some days I'm decent, but other days I honestly need to just like rip a shot through a flock and miss so that they kind of flutter and get into slower position for me to hit
Yeah,
one or two
wasn't
more
my
after that. So
that wasn't my first shot of the day. So I got the rust off a little bit before I had to make
fired it
that
up.
shot in
Yeah.
front of everybody. Yeah.
But you're right about wood ducks, and we deliver a lot of those from our part of the world, down to South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and it is a special duck early for a few weeks, and then they boogie and they're gone on us. So, and I tell you, nothing better than a beautiful Drake wood duck, fully plucked, fat, ready to go south and put them on the grill. So I'm a fan too. So you're not hurting my feelings by talking about wood ducks.
Agreed. The Maryland October split is almost a religious event enshrined specifically for wood ducks. Everyone picks a hole, sets up at some ungodly hour somewhere near 3 a.m. There's nightmare hours, and gets ready to have a quick, very quick wood duck specific morning. And that's what kind of kicks off the waterfowl season. We do have a September teal split, a very early one in Virginia, but that October wood duck split really kicks off that puddle duck season. In the Chesapeake region specifically, duck hunting here, black ducks save our season every year. That's the majority of the ducks that we pursue and that we shoot. We do get a small mallard migration, definitely,
Yep.
but we have a lot of game farm raised mallards as well coming from the eastern shore that kind of just cycle and loop within the region. This year, I got the privilege of actually joining the National Migratory Bird Harvest Bird Part Survey, which was really incredible.
So you got to send a wing in from each
I
bird.
did.
Cool.
I did.
Very cool.
I did. It was so fascinating. I got to send in a wing from North Dakota, got to send in wings from Maryland and Virginia. So I'm glad I was able to spread to those 3 states. The only bird I wasn't able to send in, wasn't able to harvest this year was a Virginia goose. I shot geese in Maryland, did not convert on any geese in Virginia, unfortunately, but got plenty of bird parts in. Really excited to see those results, and what a cool program for the Fish and Wildlife Service, and long may it live. It's such a great way to get citizens involved with federal science and actually tracking our harvest every year. And it's just a really cool way to feel like you're a part of the much larger North American wildlife model.
I remember doing it in college when I was still a forestry student, and I just got into waterfowl hunting, and I got selected for 3 years. And you get the I think it was, the last year I was actually in South Dakota, which was amazing because I put up like 125 birds or something when I was there, and lots of different species I hadn't had before. But you get this like printout afterwards of like, here's all the species, the sex, the age, and you'll get that back too, Grace. So this is your first year?
First year.
Yeah, so you get like this. I think they're still doing the printout that you get back. And it's been scaled back. It's had some federal funding woes like most of my birds has. But yeah, it's vital information to understand age ratios. And when we do this duck duel thing later, a lot of the data come from the parts survey. And there's a lot of people that crap on it for the quality of it. But the question is, are we going to use it for high science in research? Maybe, and some people do. We collect feathers from birds there for our research through my university job for stable isotope research, which can help tell you where a bird came from. But the point is as I always say, like, is it good enough to keep track of massive changes in sex ratios, age ratios, harvest in general? And the answer to that is yes. And again, I think there's a lot of folks that crap on these surveys and banding in all of our surveys. And, my comment is we need them to continue to run our programs by legislative mandate in general and have hunting seasons. And so be careful, I'd say crapping on them too much because they're trying to keep them within budget, gain valuable information and valuable enough information to make decisions that we know To some extent, can be at gross scales, but they're usually good enough. It's rare that we make mistakes. They're good enough to track populations and good enough to make season and harvest management type decisions. So, but I tell you, man, the first time I did it and got that list back, it's part of what got me fascinated with waterfowl was like, didn't realize there's this massive network that's been going on for, decades to track waterfowl populations and then harvest as well. So pretty cool stuff. Yeah, if anybody gets a chance to be part of it, I would recommend it, as I think Grayson would.
Definitely, yeah. Really support those federal programs that get people involved, that get hunters involved with the process of determining harvest numbers every year. A few years back, me and a couple friends were actually able to harvest a group of Canada geese that came in together. It was a small family group. We were hunting near Jug Bay actually, and we're hunting on some private land near that refuge, and that's why it's so important that we continue to fund our refuges. And it's important because that group had come down all the way from the Ungava Peninsula, way up in Canada, and we were able to harvest 5 birds out of that group, and all of them had bands on them.
All
Uh,
of them.
all of them. It
Were
was
they all from the same area?
all from the same area, all banded in the same place.
Wow.
4 of them were too young to fly when they were banded, and that was like they were essentially yearling birds that were sticking together all the way down from Canada. We could not believe it. Picked them up out of the field after we had, hopped up out of the pit and shot them. Um, yeah, pretty unbelievable stuff, but just speaks to the importance of good funding
Yeah.
for public lands.
And if folks want to look up, so you sent me your band from that Canada Goose, and it came from Akulavik, which is an Inuit village in Nunavik in northern Quebec, and it's Aqulivik. The population in 2021 of this place was 642 people. There's probably more geese than people, and it's about, I'd say, 7/8 of the way up Hudson Bay on the east side. Again, Nunavik, Quebec, Inuit village area where this is Atlantic Flyway folks, feds and state people go up to that. The larger name of this is like Ungava Peninsula. That's like that far northern Quebec area. And folks go up there and round up geese when they're flightless and band them so we can keep track of harvest. And so that's a cool one. That's fun. So you got into a big family group that had come all the way down for a good hunt for y'all. So these connections matter a lot, huh?
Oh, for sure. And that was actually with a few of our policy council partners. That hunt was, and then I think the year prior or that same year, I had a really good band year, at least part of a group that always did. We were again in a refuge, and we got into a group of black ducks that came in, and it was very early morning hours. We didn't inspect the duck when my buddy's retriever brought him back. But once the morning light started to creep in, we saw something shiny on one of the ducks, and we looked down, and sure enough, there was that black duck that had a female black duck that had a band around her leg. So we we pulled straws to see who was going to claim that band because one of us 3 had shot it, but we couldn't remember who it was, and we didn't want to be egotistical and say like for certain that, oh, I shot it, it was me. So we left it to chance. My buddy actually registered it. It sits on his lanyard now. But just like I was saying before, just a great memory.
Wait. So did you draw straws? You did it randomly as to who got it?
Yes, because it was one of us 3 that shot him at first light. Sent the dog out. Dog brings the bird back. Didn't look at the bird's feet because we're looking up at the sky for what's flying in next.
Birds, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was a pretty quick flight that morning. We looked down and we couldn't believe it to shoot a banded black duck, and it is a privilege of the Atlantic Flyway to be able to pursue those birds because they're so highly coveted in other flyways, and it's so normal to just shoot, your limited mallards in Central Flyway, Mississippi Flyway. You got to work a little harder in the Atlantic Flyway, but we have, this illustrious the black duck, which is like this illustrious puddle duck that so many people spend a lifetime chasing, and we have in droves here.
Yeah, and bringing it back to Chesapeake Bay, those coastal marshes are vital wintering areas. Jersey down to y'all, basically, Long Island, Jersey, Delaware, Virginia, Maryland. That's core kind of black duck wintering area. We have a few that stay on the Finger Lakes in New York here and there. There's some that stay up on rivers up into Pennsylvania and elsewhere, on freshwater. But they're much more of a coastal bird. Than the mallard. It's not like mallards won't go to coastal areas. I used to fly the midwinter survey for the state of Maine, and increasingly we were finding mallards on coastal wetlands during the January midwinter survey, but most of them were black ducks. So those are key areas in the bay. So not just the bay water quality itself, but the quality of those coastal wetlands specifically for keeping black ducks with us really matters.
Definitely. Those are on my weather app. I keep some of the Finger Lakes, and I keep kind of that upper east, New Jersey, New York area. Just keep refreshing it to get ready for a big freeze and get ready for that big push of ducks coming down.
Yeah, it does happen. Less so, and let's not talk about the El Nino coming. We're just going to put that in the back pocket for now and maybe talk about it later because it might be a warm winter. But I did look up that bird too, and it's something in French. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It is, I wouldn't say it's central Quebec. It's still southern Quebec, but it's up there. I mean, it's in the boreal. Might be like the clay belt. It's north of, that bird was banded north of Ottawa, 5 hours north of Ottawa. So if anybody wants to know where this bird is, just pull up Ottawa and look like 5 hours north. I'd say it's almost halfway to James Bay. So pretty far up there. I'm guessing that's Canadian Wildlife Service, folks out of one of those offices that are banding in the area. So real core, not farmland, but more big boreal, beaver pond wetland, large kind of oligotrophic, very clear lakes that these black ducks are in up there. That a great place to, keep wild, I guess. There's a lot of work by Canadian Wildlife Service and others to keep Quebec kind of wild compared to the development elsewhere. So. And I'm guessing you looked that up too, where that thing came from.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And my attempt to pronounce kind of came out the same way yours did. Brush up on my French. Apparently we shoot a lot of birds from the whole region of Canada. So
yeah, that's a great comment. I beat the drum that, the Atlantic coast should really probably pay more attention to Ontario and Quebec and the eastern provinces than the prairies. And that's true for some species. When you get further down the flyway, when you get like south of North Carolina, a lot of those birds start coming out of the mid-continent more, I think, right? Coming across the continent to them. But a lot of our stuff, New York to North Carolina, there's a lot of connection to Ontario and Quebec birds. So, and it's a less productive landscape than the prairies. And it's probably why, to some extent, we got less birds. We also have less birds just because I think over the years, like we've been talking about with the Chesapeake, we've developed it and degraded it, and there's just not space for them like there once was. So, again, kudos to you guys with TRCP for keeping these birds with us, and great stories on those bands, Grayson.
Thanks,
Grayson. I like your story about drawing straws for bands because we've done that with snow geese here, and unfortunately I've always drawn the short straw, so I have yet to shoot a snow goose that has a band on. I live about 10 miles from Middle Creek, so we wait for the snows to return every February and go after them pretty good up here.
There's a good snow goose migration in the Atlantic Flyway, and Middle Creek's one of those special places for sure.
Sure is, and not just from a hunting perspective, but just to see that spectacle of that number of individuals on the lake. So if you're not a hunter and you're just a conservationist and you appreciate and care about wildlife, Middle Creek is a great place to go during that snow goose migration just to be able to see a flock of 100,000 birds on the water.
Yeah, for sure. It's a spectacle. There's a lot of people that come to Montezuma to see that as well. And that lesson, Grayson, about that band too is fantastic for any of our younger listeners. If there's a band that comes back, a dog brings it back, somebody brings it back in the boat, the best thing you can do if you don't know that you shot it is try to give it away over and over again. Everybody in the group shouldn't argue whose it is. They should argue why it's not theirs. And I think if everybody agrees, I have no idea, then you draw straws. There's always that one guy, though, that's like, no, it's mine. And, he might have a lot of bands on his lanyard, but he's kind of looked at a little differently in the blind in general. So try to give your bands away first.
Yes. If it's that important to you, man, you can have it. It's a memory that we will keep together as a group of friends.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We all know that feeling. Every waterfowl hunter knows the feeling. You're motionless in the marsh at first light, watching birds work the spread, hoping this season is as good as the last, hoping that the future has birds working the spread for generations to come. At the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, the mission is simple: to guarantee all Americans quality places to hunt and fish. For waterfowl hunters, that means safeguarding habitat and migration corridors and creating more places to hunt, so strong fall flights and good hunting opportunities aren't a thing of the past. As the nation's largest coalition of conservation groups, TRCP brings together hunters, anglers, and conservation partners to make sure the future of waterfowl hunting stays strong. Learn more today and join the TRCP by visiting trcp.org. All right, my friends across duck country, we are back, and let's do another edition of Duck Duel with the TRCP duo of Grayson and Jim. So this is a fun quote-unquote betting game with all our guests during the off-season this year. It's, as we like to say, tongue-in-cheek, Duck Duel, the official betting platform of the Foul Weather Podcast. Yeah, so at the end of the day, nobody's winning anything because legally we can't do any betting here at the Foul Weather Podcast, but maybe we'll give away some swag to everybody that played at the end of the year and just for being great guests. But here's how it works. We just do the over-under, so I'll give you a question, you guys, with a number, maybe harvest number, maybe sex ratios, maybe BPOP estimate, and you have to tell me if you think that number will come in over or under the number we provide. So, and most of the numbers I give you are like last year's numbers, so you can kind of equate to that. So make sense? You guys are all set for this thrilling game?
Oh, yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
There you go. All right. And Jim already said in the break that he's going to defer a little bit to Grayson because Jim mostly hunts pine goats. It's our fun name.
You were supposed to tell people that.
You already told people that, so we're good. We're good. Hey, you still chase ducks. You're still there for the Chesapeake and for all the conservation stuff. So I don't really care. Honestly, we're all in this together. So
that's right.
All right. So all I have to say after the question is over and under, and I will log your answers and keep track, so I don't have to go ahead and listen to this whole thing and me yammer on again. So Arkansas, the mallard capital of the world, harvest for the 25-26, so last year's season, the over-under is 500,000 mallards. What do we think?
I'm thinking they had a pretty tough year last year, but those guys certainly kill ducks down in Arkansas. I'm going to say just over 500,000.
I'm writing just over, so I'm going to hold you to that. No,
okay, sweet.
That doesn't count really. Yeah, I think so. I think it was a little better. There's going to be people that are going to say no, but it was spotty, but the weather should have got them there a little bit better than it has in the past. So we'll see. All right. So the traditional survey area, the total duck population for this coming season for 2026. So that's kind of like the mid-continent. When we hear about like that total duck population, what's flying south, the over-under is 32 million.
I'm waiting for you to answer.
Under.
Just
so I
under.
think most people said slightly over. That's fine. It's possible. It seems like water was a little better. Numbers were fair. And a lot of folks think slightly over. But that could set you apart from everybody else in this quote-unquote competition.
Hopefully in the right direction.
All right, mallard population in the eastern survey area. So those are the mallards that come down from Ontario, Quebec towards us. It's actually a survey that goes all the way, I think, to Virginia along the Atlantic coast. So the estimated abundance for this year coming up, 1 million mallards.
Over.
Yeah, I've been seeing them a little bit everywhere, right? More so than in the past. So I don't know what's going on. And a lot of them are still coming from Ontario and Quebec, so there could be other stuff going on there. But Louisiana total duck harvest for last year, 1.3 million.
That's a lot of ducks.
Over.
Yeah, it got a little cooler. So I don't think they shot mallards, but I think they shot a lot of other ducks got to them. Yeah, that's more than the whole entire country of Canada, just so folks know. So
Certainly. We heard about that on Capitol Hill. Definitely.
in what way, Grayson?
Oh, just from the corn debate that came
Oh
out.
yeah, we're not gonna talk about that, but we could do a whole episode.
I listened to your episode on that. It was great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I try to provide clarity without bias. So, and people think just because I'm from the north and I have hunted in a flooded cornfield that somehow I'm like jaded or skewed or biased, and that's not it at all. I just think it's a speck and it's not worth talking about. Louisiana total mallard harvest for last season 700,000.
Over.
He's going Louisiana, good season. All right, we're on the South Carolina one, which you like. It sounds like, Grayson, you already talked about game farm mallards. So immature versus adult mallard age ratios last year for South Carolina, 2 immatures to adults.
Yes. Over.
And you you said you listened to the last episode and got a feel for this. So you want to try to explain it to the listeners?
It is because of the game farm mallards that are being put on the landscape that there are more immature ducks available or just present because they're being literally factory raised. Also, wanted to say a point on Louisiana. That's where I shot my first redhead. Beautiful
Nice.
duck hunting down there.
Yeah, no, Louisiana duck hunting is not bad at all in the
It's
least. Good on you for listening to the podcast last week and learning something. Yeah, like usually those high numbers of immatures to adults are for northern states, and South Carolina has been as high as like 5 immatures to adults in that mallard harvest age ratio from the wing bee or parts collection survey. So it's in all likelihood the release of game farm birds, which are all first year birds down there. All right, West Coast, California mallard harvest for last year, 150,000.
I'm gonna say under.
I already typed it. I think everybody just thinks about California being hot and forest fiery last year. So May ponds and prairie and parkland Canada and the north central US. So that's kind of the traditional survey area south of the boreal, right? We don't do the boreal. So May ponds in the prairie, parkland, and north central US, 4 million.
Over.
Yeah, we got a little wetter, I think. I think you're right, slightly over. Okay, now let's recall that Louisiana total, where are we at? Louisiana total duck harvest was 1.3 million. That was question 4. We're on question 9. Atlantic Flyway total duck harvest, 1.3 million. Is Atlantic Flyway total duck harvest basically equivalent to Louisiana's total duck harvest? 1.3 million.
Gosh, I hope my buddies did well enough this year. We represented the Atlantic Flyway. I'm going to say just under.
Oh, he's going with under. So just under 1.3 million. All right. So now we contrast that with Mississippi Flyway total duck harvest of 6.4 million for this last season.
Over.
He's going over. I love the optimism. So the over-unders are in. Jim, do you have any complaints about this from the
I have to agree. I agree with every one of Grayson's predictions. We are on the exact same page. I would have said the exact same answers.
You guys are great. I love it. I love it. I deeply appreciate the camaraderie. You got to stick with the company line, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate your support.
You got to know what you know and know what you don't know. So I'm referring to the guy that knows more than I do.
Y'all are great. So we'll see how you guys stack up against the experts once all those data are in this coming season. So last word, Jim, we'll let you go first. Any new exciting plans for the coming hunting season?
Well, I'm gonna I got a recurve bow a number of years ago. So I haven't touched it in about 5 years, and I think this is the year. So I'm gonna try to get after deer with the recurve a little bit and from a waterfowl perspective, we have a sea duck hunt plan. So wanted to get after long-tailed ducks for a long time. Something, we've hunted puddle ducks, and I've done some diver duck hunting, but never got after sea ducks. So that's going to be a first for me this fall.
That'll be fun. You just got to find them. Long-tailed ducks are dumber than a post. You can eat them. Says a friend of mine that has no sense of taste, but you can eat them. Supposedly, you can make duck tacos out of them. But you did remind me that I should probably bring my compound bow out and start getting after. We do evening porch shoots, couple beers with the neighbors, and shoot targets. So we should start getting after that. So
yeah, it's time. Pennsylvania's
yep.
hunting licenses just went on sale yesterday for the upcoming year. So it's hard to believe that time's here already.
Hey, and we're recording this on June 23rd, so we are over the summer solstice. Days are getting shorter, so fall hunting season will be upon us before you know it.
That's funny. Yesterday I was thinking about how much I miss the fall, even though it is like we're just now getting into summer. I'm like, man, I cannot wait for some weather to cool down just a little bit here.
Yeah, my tomato plants are slow this year. I haven't eaten a tomato yet, and I'm already we're all the same though. As soon as it starts getting shorter, I feel like, man, it's like mid-July, the birds start sounding different, things start acting different. Fall starts earlier, like phenology-wise, timing-wise, for the animals, more so than a lot of people think, right?
Definitely.
It's not the time to harvest yet, but that change in the seasons has happened, so.
We hear it with the crickets. When the crickets really start chirping, like in really, really, really like late summer, early September, that's when that clock starts to change.
I love it. You hit on an exact thing. My birthday's July 19th, and I swear to God, it is the birds get silent, like you wake up in the morning and they're not singing like they were, but the crickets are running at night. It's like right after that is when, for us, where we're at, when that switch flips. And it starts making me think of the fall. Like, that's cool, Grayson, because you're not just in tune with the calendar, you're in tune with the wild calendar of like how it sounds, right? And that's kind of what triggers me with everything. It's kind of how I plant. It's how I make decisions in general of what I'm doing, because it changes year to year.
For me, it's that mid-August with not just the field crickets, but when the first elk start bugling mid-August. That means fall's coming.
Well, you got us then, because I don't have that. So good for you, Jim. Grayson, what's your exciting plans for the coming hunting season?
Oh boy, me and that same group of guys we pulled straws with, and a couple other additions. We're trying to figure out what our hunting trip is going to be this year. Whether it's spending a couple extra days on the Eastern Shore or heading north and trying to hit some public land. Maybe up by you.
Nope. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't come? Okay.
Nope.
No ducks
With the
here.
changing
All right.
weather patterns and birds staying farther north, I mean, our late season, the numbers of Pennsylvania and Jersey plates, it's, we're not like super anti-out-of-staters, but we're not excited about it. So
Okay.
I'd suggest, we'll see. It might be a good year for it. I'll let you know. But just you. Don't bring anybody else. No.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So there's that. Definitely trying to get into. I got a compound bow from a friend of mine earlier this spring, right before turkey season started. So going to try to get proficient with that and take my first deer. Also got my girlfriend on her first mallard duck last year. That was her first waterfowl she shot. So looking forward to some adventures with her, shooting waterfowl this year as well.
That's great. I hunt with my wife a lot. My friends are always like, why don't we ever duck hunt together? And I'm like, well, the dog's better company. And my wife tells me she has to go sometimes. So I hang out in groups. There's lots of things I do in groups, but I'm one of those people that duck hunts largely by himself with a dog. It's my quiet place and my sanctuary. And my wife and I do have lots of good hunts together. We've had a few domestics in the marsh, which is always fun. Like, nothing violent, obviously, but like, what are you shooting at? So it's different. Like, your buddies, you pick on them. Your spouse, you yell at them. Like in the marsh. Anyhow, it's a fun dynamic, but I'm looking forward to it for sure. Well, guys, you have a great hunting season. Really appreciate you. Thanks for being with us, and keep up the great work for all the wonderful watermen of the Chesapeake, which in Long Island, they're called, lots of places they're called baymen, but they're called watermen of the Chesapeake, something I learned when I looked it up. I typed in Bayman of Chesapeake, and AI actually corrected me into waterman. So keep up the great work for all the wonderful watermen of Chesapeake and all the great people across Duck Country, USA. So appreciate y'all.
Same to you. Thank you, Dr. Mike. Enjoyed being here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mike. Just thanks again for creating this platform, for educating duck hunters, for helping us talk about the work that we do on Capitol Hill and in person with private landowners. A lot of our partner organizations certainly appreciate it as well, as we discussed in this podcast. So a big thank you to you.
Yeah, thanks, man, again. All right, folks, thanks for listening. And as always, may your skies be filled and shoot straight, my friends.